Welcome back to How to Tickle Yourself. I'm your host, Duff McDonald, along with my co-host, Matt McButter. Today's guest comes to us courtesy of Tinseltown, the funny side of it, the really funny side of it. Owen Burke tickles people for a living. He's pretty much a tickling expert. He worked in development at Will Ferrell and Adam McKay's Gary Sanchez Productions from its beginning up to its end, building a slate of projects and serving as producer on the company's various television shows. He also served as executive producer on Comedy Central's Drunk History and the series Robbie for Comedy Central also. He's been a producer on NBC's Bad Judge, an executive producer on Fox's LA to Vegas, True TV's The Chris Gethard Show, and YouTube Red's Do You Want to See a Dead Body? Owen also served as a consultant for FunnyorDie and was editor-in-chief from 2015 to 2016. In recent years, he's been focused on writing. He worked on the History of the World Part 2 series for Hulu and Murderville for Netflix. He's also recently sold an animated project at TBS through Bento Box. I don't even know what that means, but we'll find out. Previously, way back in the day, Owen served as the artistic director for the Upright Citizens Brigade Theatre in New York, and he continues to perform long-form improv and occasionally will show up at an open mic to bask in the indifference of his fellow comedians. Welcome to the show, Owen. It is great to see you.
Great to see you. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
At the present moment, traveling town to town, the mystery of the motion, right here, right now. Right here, right now. Whoa, right here, right now.
Yeah, I do a lot of tickling. I'm a tickle you, Elmo. That's what I like to describe
Exactly.
myself.
So I see, so a lot of what I just read there, we got from Owen's official bio. And what I don't see and didn't see on it was our book, The CEO.
Oh, yeah.
Or, if you'd like a different version, the Czech version. Or the Chinese version.
Oh, yeah.
I look
So
for
good.
Owen and I. So I've been a writer
I've got a
for.
copy here too, by the way.
Wait,
I've
can
been
can you hold up the CEO book again, the English
the original?
version?
Yeah.
Now, I see the price sticker. What does the price say there? What is that? Is that like, did you get that from a dollar bin? Did you have to wrestle that from a survivalist who was going to burn that for warmth or something?
I think I got it off Amazon, but someone had marked it down to $1.49, which is amazing.
I haven't seen 1 cent.
That was that was my first book. And I actually wrote it. Owen called me one day and said out of the blue, do you want to write a choose your own adventure with me? And my reaction was, of course I do. What's it about? And it's called The CEO. We don't want to ruin the plot or the plots. No. But I look forward to getting our semi-annual statements that tell us that we've still only sold 10 or 15 copies of that. What have you done with all the money you made off that book?
Well, it's really, it's so much that I do in show business. I make $0, and that is sort of what this business is. You're constantly working so hard to make no money. And some people do nothing and make a lot of money. Some people do some stuff and make some money. Some people do a lot of stuff and make zero money. And there's other people who don't do anything and don't make any money. That's what happens. But it is I remember I pitched that idea and I was like, but I don't know anything about finance. I barely know anything about math. And so I called Duff and you know what? You're also funny. You're also fun to be around, and we got along. So it was like, this will just be fun to do. And also you'll understand, because otherwise I have no idea what I'm doing. Like, because I'm not going to really research anything. I'm not going to go, this is big, really before like the internet was everywhere. So I'm not going to go to like the New York Public Library and like research, IPOs. I'm just like, I'm not doing anything like that.
It seemed like a pretty crazy task, though. I remember Duff at one point showing me this huge, like, fold out, like, poster size map of all, the tree of all of the different plots and stuff, just because you have to keep track of it. And I grew up as a huge fan of the Choose Your Own Adventure books. I mean, I actually still have them. I passed them on to my kids who read them, By Balloon to the Sahara and The Undersea Adventure and Who Killed Harlow Thrombey, all those. So I was super into it. In fact, I pulled out my copy yesterday when I knew that we were going to be talking to you today. And I leafed through it. It is fucking hilarious. It is so funny. And it's full of bookmarks. I have like 4 or 5 bookmarks in it. Because,
you're a cheater. You're one of the cheaters.
Well, I totally cheat. Like, I'd want to go back. For those who aren't familiar with the genre, it's an interactive book where you sort of go, you read part of the plot and then it says, turn, if you choose, you see a guy, all you turn around is you see a guy who's got wingtip shoes. If you want to talk to the guy, turn to page 157. If you want to run, turn to page, 162. And so depending on the choices you make, the plot changes and you have many different endings and that kind of thing. And all the books work like that. So I loved it. In fact, I remember telling Duff, you need to write more of these because there's so many other corruptible
no one else
positions.
Agrees with you.
Turns out,
no one bought it. It's like literally, it's almost like it was like a magnetic field around it at Barnes and Noble. Like people were just like pushed away from it. It was like really weird. It was like, it's no one bought it. But thank you for reading it.
Maybe it's ahead of its time. Like it seems like the kind of thing that maybe one day it'll have its big break and everyone's going to discover the brilliance of this genre and of this book.
I think it was fun. And I think, I do think ahead of its time I don't know about that, but I do think this is the thing I remember while working on it with Duff was we would try to be satirical about something. And then we would get beaten by real news, like the $6,000 shower curtain or whatever it was at that point was like this big news that a CEO bought a $6,500 shower curtain or something. And we were like, that's funnier than what we could come up with. And that's what I think a lot is what's happening with comedy now. It's like, well, let's make a joke about Donald Trump. Like he's much better. He's like he's already figured it out. He's already doing the funny thing.
Okay. On that note, I was looking through FunnyorDie. I have never heard of Donald Trump's The Art of the Deal, the movie, which
what?
you were, no, I never saw it and you can't stream it.
Oh, I think you can buy it on iTunes. Maybe you can't anymore. I have no idea. I bought it before it went into the netherworld. Yeah, there's a great writer named Joe Randazzo who used to write for The Onion. And he came in, this is when I was at FunnyorDie, and he was like, I want to do this sort of farce caper where like Hillary Clinton and Jeb Bush are chasing around Donald Trump. And it was during the election. No one thought Donald Trump was serious. I knew we couldn't make something like that. But we had done this Steve Jobs movie a couple of years ago that Ryan Perez wrote and directed that Justin Long was in, really funny. And I was like, we can make a movie like this, shoot it in 5 days, and edit it in a few weeks and get it out and make it for no money. So I always thought of FunnyorDie if Roger Corman ran the National Lampoon. That's the way I always looked at FunnyorDie. And so I was like, what if we just made a TV movie version of Art of the Deal? And we'll just shoot it in offices, do it like there's no plot or anything. It's just scenes with jokes in it. And so he was like, okay, let me read Art of the Deal. He read it in 2 days. He wrote the script and I like helped with jokes and stuff. And then we shot it. Jeremy Connor, who directed Drunk History, we shot it in 4 days, edited it in 5 weeks and had it out the day after he won the New Hampshire primary. And Johnny Depp was was Trump. And it was really, I pitched it to him. Adam McKay was meeting with Johnny Depp about something else that would be far more profitable for Johnny Depp and Adam McKay, I'm sure. And McKay was like, hey, why don't you just pitch in this silly idea? And I pitched it to him. I was like, do you know that in 1988, Donald Trump wrote, directed, produced, and starred in his own TV movie version of Art of the Deal? And Johnny Depp was like, no. I was like, yeah, because it never happened. But this is what we want to do. And so he was like, okay. He just like literally said yes right there. I was sort of like, are you saying yes to this? He was like, yeah, I'll do it. And I was sort of like, well, yes, as in yes, you'll do it. He's like, yeah, he's in. And then we did it. And we shot it in 4 days. And then we edited it and got it out. And we got some great people. Christopher Lloyd's in it. We got the real Alf. Alf did it. The guy flew in with Alf from New York. Alf was Johnny Depp's best man at his wedding. Donald Trump's best man at his wedding. Spuds MacKenzie was in the courtroom for one of the scenes. We just filled it like Henry Winkler, Patton Oswalt, Michaela Watkins played Ivana Trump and was just the funniest. She's just so funny. And it was just really fun. And it was just like really fun watching Jeremy Connor and Kevin Atkinson, the DP, like just trying to figure out. We had like 3 cameras rolling at all times, just trying to organize this crazy schedule, and Johnny Depp was in prosthetics for it and everything. It was bananas. Alfred Molina is in it like crazy. Jacob Tremblay. It's like a crazy cast.
I got to check that out. Yeah.
Yeah. It's really stupid and fun. And that was sort of the point of it. It was like, let's just make stuff and why not make it? Why not just do it? And once you get someone like Johnny Depp, like so many people sign on and then we just had fun, and you're just working the whole time. For those 4 days, you're just working all day, all night. You're just doing stuff, and it's really fun.
You worked with Adam McKay and Will Ferrell for years at Gary Sanchez. I guess that partnership dissolved. What was that like? That must have been a laugh riot.
Well, it was great for me because I've been, I love being alone in my house. And so it really worked out the best for me. I got to start making YouTube videos with a basketball player who wanted to make a cooking show. So my career just took off. He got traded to like the Pelicans and that ended that series. So, it was just for me, like, I don't know. I don't want to get into what they went through, but like it was.
No. What about the time there? Like when it was good, when the going was good?
Oh, it was so fun. Like, because I worked at both Gary Sanchez and FunnyorDie, I worked at both places from the beginning. That was what was so fun about that place is you can make Gary Sanchez or FunnyorDie what you wanted. And that, especially FunnyorDie, that place was whatever you wanted it to be. UCB was a little bit like that too, where it's an institution. It's got its rules. It's got its limitations. But within that, you can do whatever you want. And it's like, just like making that movie with Johnny Depp. If you want to do it, you could do it. So their development for TV and movies takes forever. Network TV, there's a shorter cycle of development, within a year, whether you're making it or not. Cable streaming is a little longer. Movies take years and years. So it was always great to just pop next door and just make a video and think of an idea the night before, write it, film it, have it up in 2 days. And then you're like, it's instant gratification and helping people with their ideas, giving writers, directors ideas, like helping them with their ideas, whatever it is. And it was just for people who took advantage of FunnyorDie, it was just the most fun place to work. And Gary Sanchez was the most fun place to work. Adam and Will, fantastic bosses. They were just really fun. And it was like this, we just had this weird, fun time, and there are ups and downs with everything, with life, but overall it was awesome. It was like really great. It was, I
remember some outrageous stuff on that. I mean, something that still sticks with me is the Will Arnett, Mary-Kate and Ashley Olsen sex tape.
Yeah.
Which I remember showing that to people, and I could tell, if I could be friends with someone based on their reaction to that. Because I showed that to a couple of people who were just stone-faced, and afterwards they were like, I don't get it. It's not funny. And I don't talk to those people anymore.
Well, it's so funny. Like, one of my favorite videos of all time was like not a hit at all. And it was one of those writers I mentioned before, Ryan Perez. It was just Ryan Perez falling downstairs. And like, it just really, the way he edited it, it's like a 12 stairs, but he made it seem like forever. And I just thought, this is funny. And another guy who now writes for Fallon, wrote just this blog piece about it's Halloween carving time, pumpkin carving time. It's time to fuck some pumpkins. And it's just showing a step-by-step carving and then fucking a pumpkin. These are just where else can you do this? Where else can you have an idea and then do that idea and then get that idea out? Because if something doesn't work on the internet, nobody really cares. But if something does work on the internet, then it really works. It works and everybody sees it. Mm-hmm. And so it was a real fun place to work, and great people and really talented people. Just really, UCB, FunnyorDie was really like a, the farm system for a lot of professional people working there.
Speaking of UCB, you obviously worked with Matt Walsh for years.
I just talked to him. It's his birthday.
I have on more
just
than
for the
one
uninitiated. The uninitiated, UCB is Upright Citizens Brigade. Can you give a bit of an overview, Owen?
UCB is the Upright Citizens Brigade's 4 members: Amy Poehler, Matt Walsh, Matt Bester, Ian Roberts, and they created a theater that started in 1999 in New York on 22nd Street. And a bunch of us, we started before the theater and then just built this theater. And the way I know about UCB is because of Duff McDonald. Duff McDonald and Will Arnett were my downstairs neighbors when I moved to New York. And I met Duff as Lars and I are trying to bring a queen-size box spring up a stairwell that is about as wide as my forehead. And it was just impossible. We ended up breaking it in half, and Duff was like, I don't know if you want to do it, but you were like, I can help you with that. And you just had a bong. And I was like, oh, this is going to be great. So then we ended up, I think we broke one of your lamps that night, and then throwing a basketball. And then Duff and Will, I think, had just moved out, but it was always around. We'd play hearts. And you all were going to see these improv shows at Rebar and Solo Arts. And you were like, you have to come to see this. And I was like, I don't know. And you're like, you have to come. And I went, and I was blown away. I'd never seen long-form improv. Long-form improv is different than what you would see on Whose Line Is It Anyway? You're creating scenes in the moment, not just games that are placed upon you. And it's more scenic. And Adam McKay was in that show, Amy, Matt, although for UCB, Stephen Colbert, John Glazer, Brian McCann, who's a fantastic writer. Janine Garofalo was doing monologues. It was this amazing night at Rebar on 16th and 8th. I think that's probably a CBS now. But just everything becomes a CVS.
Those
eventually.
Were such great shows in the back there. They were amazing.
Oh, it was so fun. So fun. And I remember I just wanted to get involved. I was like, how do I get involved? I went up to Amy Poehler and I was like, how do I get involved? She's like, take classes. That's what I did. Teaching a workshop this Saturday. That was it. I got involved. But I have Duff and Will to thanks for that.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So back to Walsh.
Back to Matt Walsh. In more recent years, he's one of the stars of Veep, which is a great show. But what I was going to say is, I have often referred to him as the funniest man alive. His work on stage in improv, I could not get enough of it.
You never came to my shows?
We did. We'll get to you and Paul Scheer and Rob Hubel in a sec. But Matt Walsh to me was like a god on the stage. It was just startling to me how the fluidity of his improv. Whose work tickles you the most right now? Like who makes you laugh hardest, whether it's film or otherwise?
Well, I'll say there's some improvisers that make the best improvisers. Like there's a couple of improvisers who are just there's a woman named Jess McKenna, who I think is maybe the best improviser that I improvise with. And she does like animation voices. I think she writes the fact that she's not like a super famous writer a la Tina Fey is shocking to me. She's so smart and funny. Like when I'm on stage with her, I'm like, oh, you're just the funniest, you know? It was like performing with Tina. When doing stuff with Tina Fey, it's like, oh, you're just so funny and smart. And Zach Woods, there's a guy named Neil Casey, Jason Mantzoukas. They're really fun. Carl Tart, there's a guy, Carl Tart, so funny, insanely funny person. And another guy that a lot of people don't know, this guy named Lamar Woods, is a writer on TV shows, just funny. But as far as like people that people would know, I got to say, I love Will Forte. I love MacGruber. MacGruber is so funny to me. I've seen every episode. It's the only reason I got Peacock was to watch MacGruber. I was like, wait, you're giving it away now with like a Hyundai Sonata? Sure, now I'll sign up. You know, they're like so desperate. Like, we're a major company, please. But MacGruber is just funny. And what I like about what Will Forte does, what Kristen Wiig does, what Tina does, what like David Wayne and Michael Showalter and that crew do with like Red Hot, American Summer and all of that. What I love about that is they know what makes them laugh, and then they make you laugh that way. It's not like, oh, let's create a premise that is funny, and then we'll input some references and some sort of wonky comedy math, which I think a lot of comedy is just like comedy math. Like, isn't this funny because we compared this to like a Hyundai Sonata? We use that as a reference, whatever. I'm a hack, you know, and like, believe me, I'm terrible. There's a lot of terrible shows. Why won't terrible shows hire me? I'm terrible. But so it is, but like people like Will Forte, like he makes me laugh. Like I laugh at MacGruber. And there's a lot of stuff that's funny, but it's very rare that I laugh, you know? It's just hard. There's like, it's very, you know, I read, especially doing development, it's very rare to laugh when you're reading a script. And there was one time where I laughed so hard reading a script by these two guys, Robert Carlock and Scott Silveri. I laughed so hard reading the script that my mom, I was reading it at my parents' house on vacation, and my mom ran outside. She thought I was having a heart attack. And, because these guys are so funny. They just write so funny. Another person who's coming up, and I just want the world to know about her, is Robbie Hoffman. She's just like the funniest person I've met, where you just like talking to her and she's just funny. Just funny. And I love funny people. I love people who are funny. You know, it's just, it's fun to be around funny people. All my friends are funny for the most part. You know, I living in New York, I met some unfunny people who are my friends. And, but being surrounded by funny people and doing bits all the time, it's so fun. It's so fun.
Speaking of funny people, your original improv group at UCB had Paul Scheer and Rob Hubel. Who else was in that?
Rob Riggle, Chad Carter, and then Jackie Clark, who is a big-time TV writer, Daniel Schneider, who's a big-time TV writer, Donna Furman, who is a voice actor, big-time TV writer too. So that was the group. Am I forgetting anybody? No, and me. That was the original Respecto Montalban. And that wasn't my first group, but it was the group that we all were like, we want to be a group. And so we left our individual groups to be together.
Yeah, I saw you guys a lot of the shows downstairs there on what is it, 25th Street? Where the hell was that? 26th Street. Yeah, I saw a lot of Respecto there. Yeah, it was. We still perform together. You know, we still perform once a month, and the group has been expanded. Some people dropped out, some people joined, but we have this like really open group now. We're now called Dinosaur, and we perform monthly at Largo, which has been great, really fun, you know. And we still perform. I mean, that's to sort of bring it to Tickle. Like that's what we love to do,
is improvise. That was that epiphany moment that I had when you took me to that first UCB show was like, oh, I want to do this. I don't know where to lead to, but I know this is the path. I know this is what I want to do all the time. And so there wasn't an established theater when we started. So it wasn't like, oh, an agent's like, this is how you get on Saturday Night Live or whatever. It was like the people who started that original world were people who were just interested in the form. Like, I want to find my comedic voice this way. And that's where I met all of those people. It was that was a really fun time.
I made a point in Tickled where I referred to writing the CEO with you, and I sort of made a parallel, which hadn't really occurred to me before, with improv, right? So like a choose your own adventure book is open-ended, right? It just depends. Depends on the choices that you make. And I later on, life went various ways for me, but I ended up becoming, in one way at least, a victim of certainty. I sort of closed down some avenues, and I jammed my life up a bit. And it occurred to me that improv has got to be one of the best means for keeping yourself in the moment of life itself, because it teaches you to sort of have a hyper awareness on everything that's going on so that you can react accordingly. Like, do you think that improv has helped you? I'm not talking about in your career. I mean, in your existence Yeah.
I'm a big believer in it. It is my meditation. When I did it weekly, when UCB was open, and I guess open again, but like when we did that weekly, no matter how good my life was or how bad my life was, I feel very lucky. But like that hour where I'm on stage with my friends and we're in the moment, you can only be in the moment. If you're thinking about something else, you're on. And you're just in this world where you're not thinking about bills, your kids. I love my kids. I love my wife, but you're not thinking about them. You're not thinking about work. I love my job at that time. You're not thinking about it. You're not thinking about my leaky shower. You're not thinking about anything else. You're just in that moment right there. And there's something really wonderful. And I have a bit of, not to get too into it, but like a little bit of like OCD, where I'm like, I gotta cross this threshold before the car drives by or else I'm going to hell. Like when I was a kid, like I had to make it down the stairs to the kitchen before the toilet stopped flushing, or I'd literally go to hell. I'm like, why am I doing this to myself? So I have all of these rules and control factors to make my life better or whatever that I'm trying to stop, and the meditation helps, whatever. But what I noticed, like in my house, I have markers all over my house, cracks, doorways, door jams, whatever it is that I have to pass through, in the place where I should be the most comfortable. In all the years I've been on stage at UCB and now at Largo, I don't have any of those markers. As soon as I cut through that back curtain onto the stage, I don't have any markers. There's no line on the stage, no crack, no thing I have to touch, anything like that. It's my true freest place. It is the place where I'm truly free, and free from even the inner self that I don't understand. That why do I have to continue to do this? Why can't I stop? Why can't I stop making these control mechanisms for myself, or these rules for myself that are all about safety and security and hope and fear and all of these things? But on stage, all of that, it literally doesn't exist. And it's not even active that didn't exist. And it didn't even occur to me till I was actually backstage one time with my friend Nick Kroll, who is so funny. And I was like, as I was walking through the curtain, I was like, this is the one place I don't have it. And I didn't even think of it until that moment. And that's after performing for 15 years on the same stage, And it's amazing what you don't know. And then, but it's everything that's real and truthful. And that's, you're just like, oh shoot, I never even thought of it that way,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it is very freeing. It is like, a lot of times too, and because I'm an improviser, like I've been just writing a lot, I don't know if you heard about this COVID thing, but like the country got shut down and everyone was sort of, and I didn't have a job and I'm just sort of sitting around. And so I just wrote every day. And I wrote 8 scripts during the shutdown. I finished a feature, then I wrote 2 more features, and I wrote 6 TV scripts. Whether anything happened with those scripts, some things happened, some things got traction, then that traction went away, some things sold, that one that got sold, now I sold to TBS. That's amazing. 2 weeks later, we don't do scripted comedy anymore. Too bad for me. But that Tuesday in May of 2020, when I don't have a job, the city is shut down, I don't know what's happening, but I know that I'm writing and creating and living in a world of other characters and building a world of other characters. That in itself is therapeutic. That in itself gave me a goal to look towards and relief in the moment. It was really, I always looked at it like I'm in a ditch right now and I got to build a ladder to get out of here. And I don't have any tools except for my computer and my imagination. So let's start building ladders. Some ladders got me close to the top and then fell apart. Some ladders got me one rung and fell apart. Some ladders didn't work at all. It wasn't even a ladder. I was like, I don't need a salad bar. And then one finally gets me out and onto like the flat surface. And then, oh my God, the flat surface, I realize I'm in another ditch or whatever with like the TBS. Oh, it didn't work. And so, but in that moment, it really was it's very therapeutic. It's great to work. That's why I do those open mics. I did an open mic the other day, 1:00 in the afternoon. And am I going to be a touring comic because of this? Am I getting on Kimmel? No. Do I want to? I don't care. But for that moment, when I go up there and I'm either bombing or getting a laugh, if I can get a laugh from 12 other comedians at 1:00 in the afternoon on Hollywood Boulevard, like the worst part of Hollywood Boulevard, they're like, we're not even putting stars on the sidewalk here. It's so gross here. Like there are no stars here. This is like a lifeless black hole of Hollywood. If I can get one laugh there, it just feels like, oh, I did something. I feel good. I did something, So it's a lot of that, going back to your question, like so much of being a creative person and improviser and all of that is about finding a happy place, finding a place where that is just somewhere that is yours and you're in the moment and the outside world isn't pressing up against you as much.
Very nice.
I'd like to get there.
I saw you worked on Murderville with our buddy Will Arnett.
Yeah.
Also another person who I at times described as the funniest man alive. I used to carry around a notebook when we were hanging out just to write shit down that came out of that dude's mouth.
He's hilarious.
Yeah.
He's so funny. That was a show, but that's like what this business is, Like I didn't work on that show because Will Arnett took me to my first improv class and I used to beat him handily at Hearts all the time. But it's because, it's like it just different factors. And then all of a sudden the person that actually you and Dove and Will like got me the start, that person I'm now writing jokes for. And they just asked me to do punch up on that first series. But then I just worked on a holiday special, and I'm not a big deal, acted in the series as well. And I got to watch Will work, and I was so blown away by him memorizing. I mean, they shoot those episodes, not a lot of time. It's like FunnyorDie style. It's like go, 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 maybe 2 takes. And Will memorizes all the lines, keeps track of the story, keeps track of the crime, and then improvises with the people, not only the jokes, but keeps the procedural element going. I'm like, how is this guy doing all of this? It's really, watching him work, I was like, he's going to take a big old nap after this wraps. His brain must have exploded. It was really impressive to watch him. And he's legitimately so funny on that show. And the show is funny and fun to watch.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, this show. So yeah.
I used to, what I marveled about with him was it didn't matter where you were or what was happening. Like a lot of comedians, as you were saying before, people will have some shtick, they'll have some jokes, they'll have a sort of a more formulaic approach. His humor just seemed to come out of nowhere, regardless of context, and that was what was so startling to me. It's like, wow, he just opens his mouth, and it's funny.
Yeah,
you were talking about that. You're talking about that script that you read that was so funny. He called me one time and he said, I think I have found the show. And he had just read the treatment or whatever it's called for Arrested Development. Those guys could tell just reading it. They knew that it was going to be gold.
Oh, yeah. That show was the best. That show was. And Will on that show wasn't the whole cast is incredible. But Job is a special character. Like, one of the funniest moments on TV is Michael wanted Job to mail a letter, and Job was so insulted about this menial task that he threw the letter into the sea, the crashing waves. But the wind kept blowing the letter back into him. And the amount of physical comedy, but the earnestness, the angry, self-righteous anger that Job had trying to throw that letter into the sea. It's so funny. And I mean, that's just great. That's when TV is fantastic. When you're like some of the best writers from the Golden Girls, that's like Golden Girls is like one of those shows where you have the best writers writing for the best possible comedic actors to deliver your lines. You write a line for B. Arthur or Betty White, it's going to sing. And the same with Arrested Development. You have that amazing cast, real pros, and then an amazing writing staff that's making it happen together. It's really unbelievable. I've just been rewatching it, showing it to the kids, and it holds up, and it's so funny. It's just a funny show. It's really great.
Genius.
Yeah, it's really fun.
So I noticed before we got on here that you have 27,000 followers on Twitter.
Oh my God,
we don't believe in numbers here at How to Tickle Yourself, but I can only dream what you can do if you mobilize that army. What are the plans?
Well, I'm losing. I don't really tweet anymore. Maybe that's why I've lost. I used to have more guys, but I don't really care. Like, I think because I was an early adopter maybe of Twitter and whatever, I don't know. And I used to do a lot more jokes, and then I just stopped because I want to tweet, and then I'm like, and I want to do this joke, and I'm like, why? And it's sort of like, as a platform, it's sort of lost. Like, why am I doing this? Like, what am I doing this for? And why am I railing against injustices in society? Well, who cares? I mean, people do care, but it doesn't care here. The people who follow me are all like, yeah, we agree with you. I'm not like a major comedian where I have fans following me. People who are following me sort of know what I am or my take on things on Twitter. And so I'm sort of preaching to the choir or joking to the choir. And after a while, like, it's not like, forget this place. I'm sort of like, what am I doing here? Why am I doing that?
Better places for your energy. I feel the same way.
Well, yeah. I don't even feel like it's like I'm doing it. I'm just like, I just don't know who and why. And I'm not a part of that group where we're all responding to each other and like we're Twitter friends. I never made Twitter friends. Like, I see people like, congratulations on your like daughter's graduation. I'm like, how do you know? Like, what is going on? And that's why I got on Facebook years ago, because I was just like getting all of these announcements or whatever. It's like, Glenn and Sheila, welcome to the world, baby Tabitha. I'm like, I don't know who any of these people are. Like, I'm happy for you, but like, imagine like every time you left your house, someone's like, I had a baby. Like, listen, I'm picking up dog poop right now. Can we talk about it later? Like, I don't know. So it's really, I just sort of am like, what is this all for? Like, I have this is maybe bleak or whatever, but since the shutdown pandemic, I sort of live in a feeling of the world of like nothing matters, but in a good way. Like nothing matters. Like Like I'm pitching a show. I'm going to pitch a show in a couple of weeks. I don't know if anyone's going to buy it. It doesn't matter because who knows what they're going to buy? They don't know what they're going to buy. No one knows what's happening right now. And so nothing matters. No one knows what works. No one knows what doesn't work. And so if I have a big star, it helps. But if you don't, it doesn't help, or it does help, or it's good that you don't have a big star, or we have too many big stars, or no, we need more big stars, or we need big stars and we don't need big stars. We don't want this. We want this. We want that. I just pitched something that they really wanted to hear, this company. And then afterwards they were like, you know what, that kind of thing, we don't really handle that kind of, like this kind of topic. That's not what we're looking for. I'm like, you knew the topic when I pitched it. You knew that you knew what this was. We told you what it was. You said you wanted to hear it. And then you say, we don't do that kind of thing. And it's like, really, they're saying, we don't want that from you, which is fine. But it is like a thing where like, I don't know. And I pitch it because I'm like, who knows? Maybe. You never know. You just don't know what that thing is. Like I sold this animated show to TBS. It was the last place we pitched. And they bought it on the Zoom, which I've never had before, where they actually were like, yes, we want this. I was like, yes. And they're like, yeah. I was like, okay. But then TBS 2 weeks later is like, we don't make scripted comedy anymore. Really? So you're hearing pitches, but you don't make anything. You're not doing it. And it's this weird thing of like, you don't know if the executive knows that at the moment or doesn't know it or knows it. And it's like, well, I have to continue this process of appearing like we are, or maybe they're in the dark. Who knows? I don't know. And it's just this crazy time. So I'm like, it doesn't matter. If I have an idea, like the scripts that I wrote over pandemic, I have no idea if anyone's going to like them or if they're sellable or what. I think people will like them because I think I'm okay at what I do and I'm learning and getting better all the time, hopefully. But whether someone buys it or not, I'm like, I don't know.
You know what? You know what? The yogis would describe that as follows. You have the right to action. You do not have the right to the fruits of your action. So what you want to do is do the work for the work's sake, and then we'll see what happens. I had that same revelation during quarantine where I was like, everything actually is okay. You could drive yourself crazy, on Twitter or otherwise, raging or ranting about things that are happening in the world that aren't happening to you, that are not great. But if you reel it all in and focus on, okay, I still exist. This is still fun. I have love around me and I have the opportunity to keep doing what I'm doing. Suddenly to me, I was like, oh, fuck, that's enough. That's enough. And we'll just see what happens.
Yeah. And it's really about like, when I think about, I'll talk about it. When I think about like what I'm missing in this crazy town called Hollywood. And I'm like, I have a joke like, oh, God, I've been in this business since 1994. I've been a PA, a stuntman, an actor. I've directed, I've written, I've done so many, produced, I've done so many things. When am I going to break into this business? Like, it's like, when am I going to get what everyone thinks they're going to get? No one's happy about what they're going to get. When am I going to be like this person? When am I going to be this? When do I get that? When I think about it, like, what do I really want out of life? I live in a very small house, and I was actually looking at houses when Sanchez broke up. The week Sanchez broke up, like that weekend, I'm like, oh, this is a nice house. Look, stairs. I've never had stairs before. And 2 bathrooms. I was like, whoa. And then I went to work the next day and they're like, oh, you don't have a job anymore. I was like, okay. And then, so I had to stop looking at houses. So we live in this tiny house. The only thing I really want is another bathroom. That's it. When I think about like, what is it that I really want? Do I want a boat, jet ski? I don't swim. No, I don't want any of that stuff. I would just love a bathroom. I would love to just have not like be on the toilet and have 2 doors open up and be like, I'm like, no, you know what I mean? I just want my own bathroom. Or then I share with my wife. And like, that's it. Like, and I feel like if that's what I'm worried about, if that's what it is, like, I want to I wish all my kids weren't in the same room. I have 3 kids, they share a room. Like, but at the same time, that will create something for them that they'll grow up to. Like,
for sure.
Something that we started doing as soon as the shutdown happened, and the kids were all in the same house, my wife, myself, and I work outside. I write outside. I have a chair and I just sit outside, and I've been doing that. But I just bought every episode of Little House on the Prairie, and we just started watching that as a family. And I got to tell you, I'm like, that's it. They're all jammed in a house together. They live in dirt, and they like walk to school with metal pails holding their lunch boxes or whatever they're eating. They're eating biscuits and like a goat's head or whatever they eat back then. And they're like, this is what their life is. And they're all just jammed together. And like occasionally Charles Ingalls has to go work in a dynamite mine to make money or something, and his friend explodes. And I'm like, yeah, this is my life. We're like the Ingalls family. We're just sort of trying to make our way in this country and move forward as best we can, And I feel like if I have my family and together and we're healthy, like, it's like, yeah, I don't know what else I really want besides that. And hopefully I can make a living and educate my children and be able to do all of that kind of stuff. And that's my biggest worry, is like, I just want to provide for them, like get healthcare, and that's sort of where I am.
All right. Well,
and not have to work in the dynamite mine.
There's
a couple of jobs where I'm like, I wish I was in the dynamite mine right now. This is much better than getting an angry phone call at 1:30 in the morning, where I have to like step outside to take it. Like, what is happening? But even that's like there's all these things. But it is we're lucky. I do feel very, lucky that way. And
life is good. Life is good.
Life is good.
Maybe we need to write another Choose Your Own Adventure.
I would love it. That would be so fun. I have that tree somewhere. I have a version of that tree somewhere. Like, that was an amazing. You put that tree together. I remember that. And we were
do you remember we were sitting there and we said, okay, we hadn't really contemplated the fact that you kind of need to design a Choose Your Own Adventure in advance of writing it. And I was like, how the fuck do we do that? And so we went and we bought Danger at Anchor Mine off eBay. I think I still have it here somewhere. And we mapped out, we were like, they won't know that we're stealing the skeleton of their story. And even if they did, is that copyrightable? Who cares? No one's going to catch us. But that was the most complicated part of the Choose Your Own Adventure to any aspiring writers of such books is that they all start from a common place. And ultimately you end up with, call it 24 story paths, right? It's not hard to write 24 stories. What it's hard to do is remember what your character does or doesn't know when you're like 15 steps down, because you got all this stuff that you may or may not have experienced. So we had to keep going back and being stoned the whole time was not helpful.
It's not the best way to do it.
It's not
actually, I would say we were pretty, I was always admire your professionalism. Like, when we would go to your apartment to do it, you would be like, I would get there, like, hey, Duff, how's it? And you would be like, right to work. You're like, okay, we're on page 15 or something. I'm like, okay. And we would just get right to work. And then as soon as like 6 o'clock happened, you're like, all right, we're done. And it was like, okay. And it was like that was like real professionalism. I learned a lot, like watching you work in a way that you were like very disciplined about the time we had together, because we were both doing different things.
Oh yeah, we both had jobs. Yeah, it wasn't our real job. We both had
jobs. So this was like something that we could when we could do it. And I always admired your efficiency with time and your work ethic during that time. And then we would talk about Bob Dylan or whatever and other
what
things.
A surprise.
What a surprise. We talked about that.
All right. Well, look, we have gone way long here. Owen, it is so great to have had you on here. Some great stories, comedic gold. You still got it.
Thank you.
Love you, man. And
love you. Thank you for having me. Great to see you again.
Yeah, and good luck with it.
Yeah, thank you. You too.
Thanks, Owen.
Rooting for you both. Do it up.
That's Owen Burke for you. As he mentioned, we were randomly neighbors in New York in the early 90s. You were in that apartment, I'm sure, on Hudson and Canal, thing that was falling over.
I was, yeah. I had no idea that he was a neighbor, and that's how, that you introduced him to UCB, to Upright Citizens Brigade. It's a pretty cool badge of courage, badge of honor there. Nice.
Well, it's interesting because we found out about it because when the UCB people moved from Chicago to New York, they shared an agent with Will Arnett. And his agent basically called him one day and says, "You got to go see these guys. They're hilarious." We hadn't heard of them. Nobody in New York really knew about them. And we went and saw them either at Rebar or somewhere else. And, they're one of the greatest comedy troupes of all time. But at the time, they were still on riding their mojo they were all in their 20s, right? And so, and for a while, if I remember, it was on Sunday nights. They would do... I remember going to, a bunch of shows there. Sometimes it would just be their regular improv, and then sometimes there would be, a sort of featured show. One of the really memorable ones was Matt Besser, who somehow his phone number got confused with the tech support phone number for some, I don't know, it was like offered through Starbucks or something like that. And all of a sudden he started getting all these calls where people were calling him for tech support. So he was giving them tech support?
Well, for a couple of days, he was like, fucking, I got to call this number. And then he was like, wait a second, I'm an improv comic. This is comic gold. I'm just going to fuck with these people. So he started actually doing different characters and fucking with them. And then he was like, you know what? I'm going to record this. So he started recording all of his interactions, and he would do characters. He would do one where he was, Jimmy Stewart. It was basically if you called tech support and got an old Jimmy Stewart. There was, he did robot voices. He did, it was comic gold. And the way the show format was set up is he would talk about it. He would introduce the bit, and then he would turn out the lights. So in darkness, the audience would hear his actual recording with that person. It was great. I bought the CD. It was one of my more memorable UCB shows for sure. It was just comic gold.
Yeah, and bring it back to Owen. It's he was a great guy. He was working as a PA on film sets. And it's always funny as all get out. And I guess we just were come with us to the show. So, but he does credit us with that fairly often. I've heard him say it a bunch of times. So it's great to know that, because he blazed a serious trail through Hollywood. It sounds like his writing is always an uphill climb, especially pitching shows and stuff. But my God, what I'm most impressed with is the fact that what he was saying, surrounding yourself with funny people and sort of living in a state where improv is not too far off your radar. It's good for your health, because it teaches you not to get locked in. And all those guys, there's so many of them that he named. Paul Scheer and Rob Hubel have their own podcast. They do. Those two are two of the funniest guys going now. Also, Chad Carter, Jackie, I forget her name, that was on the thing with him. They were all funny. And so every single one of them, including Rob Riggle. Rob Riggle's famous, right? He's a...
Oh, yeah.
So there's
he's been in a bunch of stuff.
There's something
I think he was a Daily Show correspondent for a while. And then he's gone on and had
There's stuff from that improv background. Yeah.
He named a bunch of, up and comers too, which I'm totally going to check out. I made notes: Jess McKenna, Lamar Woods, Carl Tart, Robbie Hoffman. I'm going to check all those out. And I'm for sure going to go and check out The Art of the Deal.
Right.
Johnny
you can't
Depp.
Stream it, but we got to maybe we can buy it online somewhere with Johnny Depp.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Maybe he said maybe off iTunes you can get it. So I got to check that out. shot in 4 or 5 days. It's like with that cast, that's a must see, especially with what's happened in the last,
And
6,
you know
7 years.
what's amazing? I didn't really zero in on it there. Is he credits Will and I with taking him to his first UCB show and sort of heading him down that path. The first book I wrote was with him, and he invited me to it. So I've had a book career that has came subsequently, but looking back on it, he broke me into it, and also it's one of the better things I've ever written. It's funny, and like you said, we were disciplined about it, and it was sort of showed me, took me from magazines to books, and so he opened that door for me too. I love that guy. Owen's the best.
Yeah, very cool guy.
All right,
Very
so
funny.
I got a couple for you here. I don't know if they're going to satisfy, but we'll see. I was reading something the other day. They were talking about sort of living in duality, and you want to get to a state of unity. And someone just basically mentioned the idea. There's a thesis, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you will often in the dualistic realm, you'll get pushback on that, which is antithesis.
Mm-hmm.
But the goal is synthesis, right? Like it's like we all know the definitions of those words, but it's like thesis and antithesis are dueling points of view. It brings us back to what we were saying the other day about
I
rising above a paradox, right?
Yeah.
And then you get synthesis.
And the synthesis is to sort of like rationalize,
to reconcile the two of them.
Reconcile. Yeah. Cool. I like it. That's good. That's good. Yeah.
And the other one I came across just yesterday is someone was writing about imagination, right? And obviously, imagination is not far from the word imagines, right? So those two aren't really surprisingly similar. Image is though for me. So imagination is when you create images in your mind. And hit the point that he was making is that perception and imagination are not too far from each other because they're both basically so with perception you'll get some sense inputs, right? And then your brain will conjure for you, you're in the theater of the mind, your sense of what's going on. And this guy is basically saying imagination is not that far from that. It just doesn't use the sensory inputs, but it's like the back half of perception. And the reason that we can get stuck in places is because we confuse imagination for things that are actually happening. And the reason that we can confuse imagination and perception is because essentially it's the same mechanism on the back end in your mind.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. Yeah, I remember, I think it's 2001, A Space Odyssey from the book version where he attributes, you don't really get this necessarily in the movie, but the monolith gets brought down to Earth at some point in prehistoric times, and the prehistoric man, the Homo habilis or whatever, we're all kind of dancing around, or being monkeys, being apes. And then all of a sudden it lights up. And what it does in the book, what you sort of learn in the book form is it actually gives that prehistoric man the ability to imagine, the ability to actually think of different scenarios and think things through. And that's what then enables evolution. Because they can actually imagine and think like, oh, hey, look at that piece of wood. What if I sharpened it? What if I made it into a point? And if I made it into a point, then maybe I could throw it at animals. Hey, what if I, built some mechanism for shooting it at animals? And so that sort of that imagination, which, anyway,
imagination,
I don't know where I'm going with that.
Imagination takes memories and does stuff to them.
Yeah.
Right. So it goes into the file of things that you've experienced.
Yes.
And
it
does
imaginates.
and what
it imaginates them.
It imaginates on them. All right. So to finish today, I don't have an Aurobindo. I have a Ramesh Balsekar, who we've read before, and it's in keeping with what point I made to Owen there, right? That one of the great lessons of the Bhagavad Gita is that you have a right to action, but not to the fruits of your action. And what they mean by that is if you get caught up predicting what's going to happen, you may be right sometimes, but when you're wrong, you'll be disappointed, and that frustration becomes a distraction for you. So one of the main things they talk about in the Gita is basically focus on what you're doing. Don't divert yourself with expectations, because you never know. And it's not that you're not doing it with intention. It's that you don't want to need a specific outcome for the action to have its own merits, right? It's work for the sake of work. So,
you know what? Just before you get into it, it does remind me of something one of our guests, Kat Lantane, said, which has totally stayed with me. Where she said, it's not your job on this earth is to project the light and reflect the light, basically the positive energy and the good. It's not your job to know what that's going to do and what impact that's going to have. All your job is just to project and reflect the light.
And what she was getting at there is that there is God's will, or for those who don't like that term, cosmic law, right? You don't know what's going on because you only have your own frame of reference. There are a whole bunch of things that may be going on in sync with the things that you're doing that are going to lead to a bigger outcome that you could possibly conceive of, right? So basically, she's totally right. And the Balsekar's talking in this passage about whether or not we have free will. And what's amazing about what almost all the yogis talk about is they say you don't, but you might as well act as if you do. Okay? And so here we go. And because this is great. He says, the man of understanding does whatever he thinks he should do, but is totally aware that what actually happens depends not on what he wanted, but strictly on God's will or cosmic law. And then fast forwarding, he goes, this is actually everyone's experience. The same amount of effort sometimes brings success and sometimes does not. Realization of this fact creates a sense of freedom from anxiety, which in turn releases an extraordinary amount of energy, which cannot but improve one's day-to-day performance beyond recognition. It is so much easier to float with the current than to swim against it. That's from his book, The Only Way to Live. But basically what he's saying is, and it's a great point, it's like sometimes things fall your way, and that's awesome. And they fall in line with what you hoped or thought might happen. Sometimes they don't. And when we beat ourselves up over the differences, we're missing a huge thing, which is there are so many factors involved in what ends up happening in your life that have nothing to do with your effort. And when we can let go of the idea that we control the outcome and move back towards what you control is the thing that you're doing, your action. If you can let go of the need to control the outcome, you release untold amounts of anxiety, because anxiety is basically your concern over what's going to happen, right? So when you let go of the need to control the outcome, that anxiety lifts. And I talk about this in Tickled. What happens with the when that anxiety is gone is you have much more capacity for awareness of what's happening to you, because you're not distracted by this sort of theoretical outcome. and you can bring all your focus to what you're doing. And that improves your performance at everything, because it means that you've brought more to the task at hand without distracting yourself by thinking of what the outcome is going to be. It's subtle, but it's profound. And it's one of the main things in the Gita. You have the right to your action, but not the fruits of your action. It's a really interesting thing to think about, and also to try and put in practice in your life.
So don't set goals. It'll just stress you out.
Exactly. There we go. Our plan is to be back here with you 1 week from now. We'll see what happens.
Bye-bye.
At the present moment, traveling town to town, the mystery of the motion, right here, right now. Right here, right now. Whoa, right here, right now.
You've been listening to How to Tickle Yourself with your hosts Duff McDonald and Matt McButter. You can help us by liking, subscribing, and sharing this podcast with others. You can talk to us and see what else is happening on Instagram and Facebook at How to Tickle Yourself. This program was recorded in Studio B of the historic Rockledge Recording Studio and the Tunnel Under Arundel. Right Here, Right Now, our original 16-part theme music was written and recorded by the legendary Paul Reddick and Kyle Ferguson of the Sidemen, with the brilliant Steve Mariner on bass and drums and in the mixing room. The podcast is produced and distributed by Storic Media. Our editor is Andrew Steiner. Our coordinator is Samantha Abramovitz. Our producers are Kristen Verbitsky and Chuck LaBella. For more information, visit storicmedia.com. That's STORIC media.com.
My love, my dear.